Something's breaking inside the Cleveland Browns, and it's not just another injury. Players are starting to whisper, not about ordinary locker room disagreements or play calling frustrations, but about something far more dangerous: sabotage. Behind the scenes, a pattern is taking shape, one that's become too unsettling to ignore. A star running back suddenly sidelined mid-season after being used in ways that raised more than a few eyebrows. A respected veteran claiming he was listed as injured, even though he says he was perfectly healthy. And a young quarterback who keeps taking the blame while others around him keep getting protected. This isn't just bad football. It feels orchestrated, a quiet breakdown of trust that's turned the locker room into something colder, quieter, and possibly divided. And when players start talking, they're not asking "what's the play?" anymore. They're asking, "Why does this feel intentional?" What you're about to hear isn't just about game strategy or tough losses. It's about power, control, and the invisible damage that starts when players believe their own coach has stopped protecting them, and may even be using them. Whether it's calculated or chaotic, something's happening in Cleveland, and the effects are already showing up on and off the field. But it didn't start with headlines. It started with one play and one injury that changed the temperature of the entire locker room. Let's break it all down. It was supposed to be just another play, routine, simple, almost forgettable in most games. But for Quinshon Judkins, the moment the ball left Shedeur Sanders' hands, something felt off. Lined up in the backfield, he wasn't running up the middle or catching a quick screen. Instead, he was wide, isolated, drifting laterally on a route that wasn't part of the usual rhythm. The pass came low and wide. He caught it, planted his right leg to brace for a move, and that's when it happened. No replay. No slow-mo, just silence. Commentators went quiet. Cameras cut away. And before the crowd could process what they'd seen, trainers were already rushing the field. A non-contact moment, one of the worst signs in football. Judkins' knee twisted awkwardly on the plant, his body going one way while his leg held its ground. The reaction was immediate. Not just pain, but panic. And when a player like Judkins reacts with panic, coaches pay attention. But what followed wasn't just medical reports or roster updates. It was questions, not about his body, but about how he got there in the first place. Because once people looked closer at that play, and a string of others leading up to it, things didn't sit right. Judkins wasn't just catching passes. He had been lining up in roles completely outside his primary skill set, at times even playing quarterback. A position Judkins hadn't been groomed for, prepared for, or even expected to step into. Just the idea of it seemed strange. But it happened not once, not as a gimmick, but multiple times in high-pressure situations. And for Judkins, those moments didn't feel like strategic experiments. They felt like setups. Force a player out of rhythm, out of comfort, and the outcome becomes easier to predict. Mistakes grow more likely. Production drops. Confidence wavers. When those things happen to a young player, people usually point to inexperience. But Judkins had already proved he could deliver. He was on pace for a 1,000-yard season before the injury. His numbers were there. His contribution was visible. So why was he suddenly being plugged into awkward lateral plays with no obvious purpose? The play he got hurt on? He caught the ball standing still. No blockers, no motion. Just him and a defender heading straight at him in open space. There's not a running back in the league that wants to be in that spot. Not in that way. Not with a defensive back closing in full speed. Some fans initially saw it as an unfortunate play call or just bad timing, until Judkins spoke up. His words weren't cryptic. He made it clear. He'd been put in positions he didn't believe set him up to succeed. He questioned the intent, said the roles felt unnatural and unnecessary. But more than that, he believed they disrupted not only his rhythm, but Shedeur Sanders too. From his view, these weren't just football decisions, they were carefully orchestrated moments that pulled momentum away from both of them. That's when people started paying attention. Because when a young player calls out coaching decisions after a season-ending injury, that's not bitterness. That's someone who's had time to think and felt it wasn't just tough luck, it was preventable. Even more painful. That play cost him the season. He was heading in for surgery, watching from the sideline the rest of the year. His stock on pause, his reps gone, and maybe worst of all, his trust in the system shattered. It's easy to say, football is unpredictable. Injuries are part of the game. But the context around this one made it different. People weren't just reacting to what happened to Judkins physically. They were reacting to the feeling that it didn't have to happen at all. Because when a player with real upside is pulled from his zone and forced into roles that don't make sense, over and over, even the commentators start asking questions. Even the vets take notice. And that's when the locker room starts to whisper. The move to line Judkins up in non-traditional spots wasn't just about scheme, it looked like disruption for the sake of something else. What that something else is, nobody's putting direct words to it yet, but Judkins clearly thinks it was personal. And that's a dangerous thing in a competitive environment like the NFL. He believed there was intent behind the decisions. That messing with the offense wasn't just poor judgment, it was done with purpose, to rattle rhythm, slow development, and possibly shift the focus, or the blame, off someone else. He didn't name names at first, but he made it clear enough. The finger was pointed at the top, and in this case, directly at head coach Kevin Stefanski. That's a big accusation. And it wasn't made lightly. Judkins didn't sound bitter. He sounded calculated, calm, like someone who wasn't just injured but disillusioned. And for teams already skating on thin margins, that kind of internal disillusion is more dangerous than any pass rush. Because football teams don't collapse when somebody gets hurt. They collapse when players start asking, was that really about football? And now, more players are asking that exact same question. If Judkins' injury sparked quiet concern, what came next sent an undeniable signal. This time, it wasn't a rookie speaking up. It was a veteran, a player respected not just for what he's done on the field, but for how he carries himself off it. When Wyatt Teller stepped forward, he didn't come with drama. He came with clarity. The kind of clarity that stops a room cold. He said he wasn't injured. Not maybe, not kind of, not dealing with something. He was clear, the injury listed by the team didn't exist. From the outside, it had seemed minor. Just another Sunday in the NFL, guys banged up, listed as questionable, shuffled in and out of the lineup. No big deal. But now, it looked different. Because Wyatt Teller, one of the most physical, reliable linemen in the league, had suddenly been pulled from action under false pretenses. And in the NFL, that's not a footnote. That's a red flag. Teller made it known he was healthy and ready to go. He had been preparing, doing everything required to stay game ready, and still, he was sidelined. Not for strategy, not for rest, but under the official claim of an injury that, according to him, never happened. That kind of thing carries weight in a locker room, especially from a guy who isn't known for chasing headlines. Teller's reputation is built on toughness, leadership, and straight talk. So when he questions something that's serious, teammates don't just listen, they start wondering. Because in this league, injury reports are more than just paperwork. They affect contract value, snap incentives, bonuses, and more importantly, reputation. A player marked as injured too often starts to look unreliable. Whether it's fair or not, it sticks. So why fake it? Who benefits from a veteran being listed as injured when he's actually healthy? Some fans waved it off at first. Maybe coaching wanted to rotate new talent or protect depth. But guys inside the locker room weren't buying that. Teller wasn't a spot starter. He's one of the anchors of the offensive line, someone you build strategy around, not bench without a word. And when Teller quietly sat while Jerry Jeudy kept running routes, despite drop after drop, missed timing, and zero consistency, players started to connect the dots. A healthy lineman sits. A struggling receiver stays. And the quarterback in the middle of it all keeps taking the heat. It didn't make sense. Not on paper, not on film, and definitely not in the locker room. Because when a coach starts manipulating injury reports, or even just appearing to, that's not protection. That's control. The kind that doesn't serve the team, it serves the narrative. And the narrative, that blame belongs on Shedeur Sanders, that if the offense stalls, it's on him. Never mind the blown routes, the missed assignments, the odd play calling, or the broken rhythm. No, somehow it always circled back to the guy under center. The same guy teammates now believe was being undermined, quietly, consistently. Wyatt Teller's situation confirmed it for many. If the coaching staff was willing to sideline a trusted vet under shady reasoning, what else were they controlling from behind the scenes? What messages were they sending? And who were they protecting? Because in most NFL locker rooms, when you see a pattern of weird decisions, players getting shuffled around, roles pulled mid-game, communication breaking during key drives, it signals something deeper than strategy. It signals distrust. That word, distrust, isn't thrown around lightly. But that's exactly what's been growing in Cleveland. Teller didn't accuse anyone of sabotage. He didn't have to. His statement said enough. A vet doesn't risk stirring controversy unless he feels the environment has already crossed a line. And that moment felt like a line was crossed. Players began watching more closely. Comments changed. Glances in meeting rooms lasted a little longer. The sideline quieted. When veterans don't feel secure, younger players always notice. Because if a guy like Wyatt Teller can be quietly erased under a fake injury tag, then who's actually safe? That's the real impact, not the stat sheet. Not the headlines, but the mood, this underlying anxiety that starts growing in every conversation. Players become cautious with their words. Coaches notice shift in body language. Some guys start pulling away. Others fall into silence. The trust that once glued the locker room together, it gets thinner week by week. From a distance, the team might have still looked functional. They lined up. They ran plays. But inside, things had already shifted. The offense had begun to feel tense. Not out of competitiveness, but out of confusion. Guys weren't just battling defenses. They were battling something else, this invisible variable that no one could quite name, but everyone felt. And if you talk to people close to the team, they'll tell you, it wasn't just a bad week. This was part of a pattern of unpredictability, favoritism, and roles that never felt stable. It made you wonder, was this staff trying to win or just trying to control the narrative? Teller's quiet pushback might seem like a footnote compared to Judkins' visible injury. But in the eyes of many players, it hit just as hard. Because a vet raising a flag doesn't just catch attention, it gives others permission to speak out. It confirms their suspicions. That things behind closed doors aren't just messy, they might be manipulative. And once that door opens, once players stop believing the reasons they're given for why they're in, why they're out, why their teammates are sitting or struggling, everything changes. It's not just game plans being questioned anymore. It's leadership itself. If Wyatt Teller's claim caused shock inside the locker room, what happened next brought confusion. And once confusion sets in on an NFL roster, everything gets harder, from reps to mindset to playing at full speed. No one expected Shedeur Sanders to be perfect. He's young, still adjusting to the pro game, still working through the speed, the pressure, the system. But what's been happening around him, that's what raised eyebrows. And of all the decisions that didn't make sense, one stood out more than the rest, Jerry Jeudy. Week after week, no matter how rough the performance, Jeudy stayed on the field. Drops, misreads, blown timing routes, it was all there on tape. Fans noticed it. Analysts called it out. Even rival defenders pointed to it during breakdowns. But somehow, the staff never blinked. The routes kept coming. The reps stayed high. He wasn't producing. He wasn't consistent. Sometimes he barely seemed connected with the rhythm of the offense. And yet his role didn't change. Instead of accountability, there was repetition. Instead of coaching adjustments, there was silence. And while the coaches weren't saying much publicly, their actions spoke. They protected Jeudy. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders. He got the full spotlight. Every loss, every stalled drive, every missed red zone trip. Didn't matter if the O-line missed assignments. Didn't matter if the play call fell apart. If something didn't work, the blame landed squarely at the QB's feet. Something about it felt imbalanced. And that imbalance doesn't just look bad on the stat sheet, it poisons locker room trust. Guys watch the tape. They see where breakdowns actually happen. And when those breakdowns get ignored for one player, but magnified for another, it sends a clear message. The standard isn't the same for everyone. Sanders wasn't perfect, not even close. But he was out there, reading, adjusting, absorbing pressure. Playing through breakdowns he didn't create. And meanwhile, Jeudy just kept getting chances. And when those chances went sideways, nobody seemed to hold him to it. That's when players started pulling back. Because when fairness disappears, resentment grows in silence. Some teams survive internal frustration because the talent keeps producing. Win games and most locker room issues get quiet. But the Browns weren't winning. The offense was sputtering. The identity was fading. And meanwhile, a handful of players were being given what looked like protection, from criticism, from reduced roles, even from consequences. And nothing kills effort like selective accountability. In NFL rooms, everything gets tracked. Reps, effort, output. Even if coaches don't say it out loud, players feel how decisions ripple, and the ripple here was undeniable. Jeudy was treated like an automatic playmaker, despite months of proof that something wasn't clicking. When coaching staffs overcommit to one player, they risk losing all the others. That kind of loyalty isn't strength, it's blindness. And it set off alarm bells not just inside the locker room, but outside it too. By now, fans were noticing, especially the ones who break down tape frame by frame. They weren't just questioning decisions, they were asking more dangerous questions. Why is leadership betting on someone who's struggling and ignoring the guys doing the dirty work? Those questions started echoing louder after Judkins went down, after Teller spoke up, and after Jeudy kept starting. Football fans can be forgiving. They understand slumps. They get that not every player hits stride instantly. But when fans see favoritism affect the game, that's when things shift. The audience stops rooting and starts calling it out. The coaching staff offered no meaningful explanation, no shift in game plan, no accountability to the locker room or the public. They just kept calling Jeudy's number, even when it didn't make sense. Even when film showed the ball should have gone somewhere else or never been thrown at all. Every time the Browns walked off the field after another stalled drive, the tension deepened. Sanders walked to the sideline with the weight of the failure. Jeudy walked with little consequence, and everyone around them felt that divide growing. Now add this to the mix, a locker room already shaken by miscommunication, uneven standards, and strange injury designations. You could feel the momentum collapsing from the inside. Players didn't need to say it out loud. The glances in film review, the shoulder shrugs, the indifferent nods on the bench. These are small things unchanged to casual eyes, but to teammates, they speak volumes. Locker rooms are built on shared sacrifice. And when players feel like certain teammates aren't being held to the same standard, that unity cracks, not explosively, quietly. The little things stop mattering. Preparation becomes mechanical, not meaningful. Trust shrinks. Brotherhood fades. And that's the worst kind of breakdown in sports, the cultural one. Because it doesn't show up on stat sheets until it's already too late. Jeudy's usage wasn't just about touches. It was about what those touches represented, that some players were allowed to fail repeatedly while others were benched, injured, or scapegoated. The imbalance screamed louder than any tweet or headline. And the ones who felt it most were the ones doing everything right with nothing to show for it. That kind of thing spreads. Guys become passive. They stop correcting each other. The sideline loses its urgency. Eye contact fades. Players check out long before the whistle blows, not because they've given up on football, but because they've lost faith in how it's being managed. And once a team starts losing faith, there's no play call that can fix that. At some point, the questions stopped being about play calling. When players publicly challenge injury reports, when reps start going to underperformers, when a quarterback gets all the heat for failures he didn't create, people stop asking, what's going on with the offense? And start asking something more dangerous. What exactly is Kevin Stefanski doing? Because when you zoom out just far enough, all the confusion starts to feel a little too coordinated. The patterns appear. The inconsistencies reveal something heavier than poor planning or in-game mistakes. It starts looking like control, not leadership, not accountability, just control. And what Judkins hinted at, what Teller says outright, it all points to one thing. Players don't feel like they're being coached. They feel like they're being managed, but not in the way good organizations manage a roster. In the way that makes players question whether every move is part of a calculated narrative, one where their success doesn't always seem to be the goal. Take Judkins. He didn't just say his injury was unfortunate. He didn't blame the Bills' defense or a bad cut on the turf. He made the connection. He said the role he was put in not once, but over and over felt unnatural, deliberate, dangerous, not in design, but in intent. When a player suggests intent, everything changes. That isn't a critique. That's a warning from inside the huddle. He didn't say it to throw blame. He said it because the decisions that led to his injury didn't feel accidental. They felt structured, forced, like he was being set up to fail. That might sound extreme until Wyatt Teller confirmed something didn't add up, until Jeudy kept starting, until Sanders kept being the one left holding the blame. You start to connect the dots, and suddenly coaching choices look less like missteps and more like strategy. Not the kind you want on a Sunday afternoon. The kind that's designed to manipulate outcomes, protect reputations, and shift accountability away from where it belongs. And when a team senses that from its coach, trust doesn't just fade. It collapses, because players can survive bad schemes. They deal with bad game plans all the time. What they can't survive is feeling like they're tools in someone else's power play. Nobody joins the NFL thinking they'll have to navigate politics just to keep their spot secure. That's what this situation feels like, a power structure where performance matters less than positioning, where your standing with the coach might determine your future more than your actual play on the field. And Stefanski, he isn't acting like a coach trying to pull guys together. He's acting like one who's tightening his grip, and players feel the pressure. Everything about the current Browns offense screams dysfunction. One week, a player starts to click. Next week, he's off the field. a receiver gets open. Ball goes elsewhere. A play works perfectly, not used again. Rhythm shows up, then evaporates by next quarter. The pieces don't stick together, not because they can't, but because something keeps ripping them apart. That kind of breakdown doesn't happen just from X's and O's. It happens when the vision behind the offense is no longer about production, but about protection. Not of players, but of the staff, the image, the hierarchy, and that hierarchy, it's fragile. It punishes those who ask too many questions and rewards those who don't. It's not hard to see how Stefanski's handling of Shedeur Sanders fits into that puzzle. Publicly, he's avoided harsh criticism. But behind the scenes, insiders say the structure around Sanders is anything but supportive. The offensive scheme doesn't play to his strengths. The blame still lands at his feet. And the personnel decisions around him only seem to disrupt his rhythm, never build it. So the question becomes, is this about winning? Or is it about keeping control of the locker room, no matter what the scoreboard says? Because once a coach starts prioritizing control over development, the team stops growing. You don't nurture talent by destabilizing it. You don't build trust by hiding agendas behind injury reports and shallow press conferences. You build it by pulling the best from your players, even if that means uncomfortable growth. And in Cleveland, growth seems to be the last thing happening. What Stefanski is doing, intentionally or not, feels like a top-down culture where the players at the bottom keep getting moved like pieces on a chessboard. Not to win the game, but to protect the king. And when the guys downfield start realizing they're not being trusted but used, yeah, that's when the real damage starts to show up. Quietly, slowly, lethally. It starts in practice. In the locker room, in the meeting rooms where voices stop speaking up. Where corrections don't hit the same. Where reps turn into routines and belief turns into survival mode. Because you can play football without trusting your coach. But you can't win. That's what makes this situation so dangerous. It's not about scheme anymore. It's about psychology. You can't build chemistry around silence. You can't build leadership on favoritism. And you can't build a team when the ones doing everything right keep getting shuffled out of the frame. Players talk. Always. And right now, the talk isn't about playoffs. It's about turf wars between those trying to play football and those protecting a system that's working for fewer and fewer people. And that system, whether he wants to admit it or not, is wearing Stefanski's name. When trust fades in a locker room, it doesn't happen all at once. There's no dramatic explosion. It slips away in pieces, so quietly that by the time anyone notices, it's already too far gone to stop. And the worst part? Everyone still shows up like normal. They stretch, they suit up, they go through walkthroughs. To someone watching from the outside, it looks the same. But it is, because once trust breaks, effort becomes performance, not purpose. Guys are no longer playing for the guy next to them, they're playing to protect themselves. We've seen it building in Cleveland. At first, it was just tension. Questions about Shedeur Sanders' usage, concern over Judkins' injury, confusion around Wyatt Teller's mysterious absence, and the constant, glaring silence surrounding Jerry Jeudy's role, despite the mistakes that kept piling up week after week. But now, it's different. This isn't just about X's and O's anymore. It's about atmosphere. The locker room doesn't feel like it's being held together by unity. It feels like it's being held together by pressure. Pressure not to speak out. Pressure to just go along. Pressure to act like everything's fine when almost everyone quietly feels that it's not. Veterans start pulling back first, because they've seen this before. They know when stability is fake. And instead of pushing, they start preserving. They withdraw. They get quieter. Their focus shifts from setting the tone to simply maintaining appearances. They still lead, but not with belief, with caution. Younger players pick up on it fast. Rookies and second years start checking over their shoulders. Start wondering if their name will be the next one scratched off the depth chart without warning. Instead of playing confident and loose, they play tentative, worried, tight, hesitant, and in this league, that's the fastest way to lose your edge. Because once confidence gets replaced with caution, chemistry dies right behind it. And once chemistry breaks, it doesn't matter how much talent is in the room. Guys stop correcting each other, stops being we and becomes me. Everyone's calculating how many snaps they're getting, who's winning favor with the staff, what conversations are happening behind closed doors. Every meeting becomes more political than productive. Every mistake becomes a liability. Not for the team, but for the individual. That's when football stops feeling like family and starts feeling like survival. In survival mode, players aren't trying to win games. They're trying not to be next. When one teammate like Sanders gets leaned on so heavily for failures far beyond him, others see it. They don't say it aloud, but they think it. If they blame him, they'll definitely blame me. That fear spreads fast. It doesn't matter how close players are off the field. When you're unsure if you'll get pulled mid-game for something outside your control, you start conserving energy. Playing not to fail instead of playing to win. And nothing wins slower than fear. What's worse? The line between safe players and expendable ones becomes visible. You can feel it. Some players, like Jeudy, seem untouchable, protected even when the numbers don't justify it. Others, guys like Judkins, like Sanders, are made into examples. Even Teller, a vet, had to push back just to correct the narrative. That imbalance starts forming sides. It doesn't happen in one explosive moment. It creeps in through quiet conversations, through glances in team meetings, through feelings that can't be proven on tape but are felt just the same. You end up with a locker room where some guys start aligning with leadership, either because they believe in it or because they think siding with the staff protects them. Others begin rallying around teammates who feel thrown aside. And right there, boom, a line is drawn, not across the field, but across the room. When there are sides in a team, there is no team. And once that line is in place, everything gets harder. Play calls don't hit. Execution gets sloppy. Communication gets clipped. Guys stop going the extra yard, not out of anger, but out of weariness. That mental fatigue shows up in missed assignments, dropped balls, bad protection, and it shows up fast. But none of those things are the root of the issue. They're symptoms. The real issue is intent. Players are fine with tough coaching. They'll take the heat. They'll own their mistakes. They'll grind through losing streaks, competition, even sacrifice their own numbers for the team, but they can't function under manipulation. When it feels like decisions are being made not to win, but to protect narratives, demote threats, or control perception, that's when things start to turn toxic. And if what Judkins and Teller are saying is even partially true, that's exactly what's happening. If Judkins really did get thrown into out-of-position roles that set him up to fail, on purpose, just to impact Shedeur or manipulate matchups, if Teller really was benched with a fake injury tag to justify a personnel choice, if Sanders really is being left exposed so others can quietly keep their roles, then Cleveland doesn't have a play-calling issue. It has a culture crisis. Because this isn't about one bad call on third down or one dropped pass in the red zone. This is about how trust disappears when players start to believe they're being misled, not coached. And once that belief slips, seasons follow fast. From a distance, things always look stable until they don't. On paper, the Browns still have the names, the talent, the system. But the truth is, teams don't fall apart in full view. They don't explode on the sideline or collapse in a single game. They unravel quietly, internally. And by the time fans start asking what's wrong, the damage has already taken root behind closed doors. Look at the signs. Plays that work vanish the next week. Players who start building momentum suddenly see their roles shifted, restructured, or stripped. There's no consistency, no identity. Just chaos with a coat of structure painted over it. And anyone who's been around NFL culture knows exactly what that means. The team is breaking down from the inside. The rhythm that once made drives flow smoothly is gone. Reps feel stale. Situational awareness is off. Communication slips a little during each game, and it always starts with hesitation. Quarterbacks second guess. Linemen hesitate on shifts. Receivers half adjust mid-route. And it's not because they don't know the playbook. It's because they don't trust where the play is coming from anymore. Trust is oxygen in this league. Without it, everything slows. And that slowdown isn't just physical, it's mental. The moment a player starts thinking more than reacting, performance drops. 1/10 of a second becomes the difference between a clean release or a sack, between a missed block or a 37-yard gain, between winning and stacking another L that has nothing to do with effort. That hesitation we're seeing on the field, that disconnect, it's not a talent issue. It's what happens when players stop believing the plan is real. When they think the scheme isn't built to help them win, but to help someone else control the narrative. And when that realization sets in, everything changes. Players don't come to work the same. They go through the motions, but with walls up. Preparation gets quieter. Conversations get shorter. Each guy locked into his own head, trying to survive the week and avoid being the next mistake talked about in the Monday meeting. And if you're watching closely, it's starting to show. The sideline doesn't feel united, it feels fractured. Players are no longer celebrating small wins together. Guys walking off the field don't look frustrated, they look disconnected. Numb. That's not emotional immaturity, it's emotional fatigue. And it's the kind of fatigue that comes when you're being asked to give your all for something you don't fully believe in anymore. The deeper this goes, the more dangerous it becomes. Because once the cultural foundation cracks, nothing else holds. Leadership becomes noise. Players stop pushing each other. The unspoken accountability, the kind that happens in great locker rooms, is gone. Now it's just silence. And silence in a locker room? Terrifying. It's proof that energy is gone, belief is gone, and the connection between players and coaches has evaporated into a game of PR lines and depth chart politics. No one says it out loud, but everyone feels it. And let's be clear, every single NFL locker room has conflict. Every team has players who want more touches, more snaps, more say. That's normal. But what's happening in Cleveland? This isn't normal. This is the kind of quiet fracture that spirals into something unrecoverable. Something that shatters even the most talented rosters long before the playoffs are out of reach. Because when players don't know if they can trust what they're hearing, they start tuning everything out. Take away trust, and all you have left is transactional football. The body might still be in it, but the heart is. And once that shows up on film, it's already too late. That's what makes this moment so crucial. On the surface, you've got miscommunication, third down frustrations, dropped passes. But underneath it, you've got a full-blown fracture. Not just between players, but between players and leadership. And Kevin Stefanski's name keeps coming up, not just as the head coach, but as the constant in every suspicious turn this season's taken. Whether he's making the calls outright or just allowing them to happen, he's the figure that ties everything together. Judkins is injured after being thrown into a role that made no sense. Teller benched for an injury he says never existed. Jeudy protected regardless of performance. Sanders scapegoated every time something breaks down. That's not football strategy, that's narrative engineering. And now players know it. What we're seeing isn't just offensive stagnation, it's structural tension. And if you've ever watched a crumbling building from the inside, the collapse always looks quiet right up until the moment it doesn't. Fans might still be asking whether this team can turn it around. But inside that building, that question feels different. Because turning it around doesn't mean fixing the run game or improving red zone efficiency. It means fixing trust, rebuilding unity, reestablishing belief. And none of that happens with a whiteboard and a headset. It happens when players feel seen, protected, and led by someone who's all in for them. Right now. It's hard to say if this locker room still has that kind of clarity, or if they're just quietly walking through the final few chapters of a season already lost well before the final whistle. The breaking point of a season never shows up just on game day. It doesn't start with a blowout loss or an ugly stat line. It starts quietly in the weight room, in the film sessions, in the locker room after Thursday walkthroughs when guys are just going through the motions. No edge, no spark, no unity. That's what's happening in Cleveland now. All the signs are there. Players are still showing up, still suiting up, still saying the right things in interviews. But inside the building, the belief that fuels championship-level play, it's gone. There's no fixing the offense if the quarterback's growing resentment. No retooling tight end alignments when defensive leaders are whispering that rotations don't make sense. You can't build rhythm in a system where players don't even believe the decisions are being made to help them succeed. You don't recover from that with more film study. You only recover when players start trusting again. Trusting the plan, trusting the coaches, trusting the intent. But right now, there's no trust left, and the locker room knows it. Lines have already been drawn, not by confrontation, but by silence. Players have mentally divided themselves into two groups, those who feel protected and those who feel exposed. And you don't need a meeting to know where you stand. You can feel it in how you're coached, how you're rotated, how you're spoken to after a mistake. That split changes everything. Instead of fixing breakdowns together, players internalize. Instead of holding each other accountable, they isolate. Veteran leaders stop speaking out, not because they don't care, but because they've learned those words don't go anywhere, or worse, they get used against them. You lose the emotional loyalty of a locker room before you ever lose their physical effort. The legs keep moving. The bodies still hit. But the connection, the chemistry, it evaporates. And once chemistry dies, cohesion follows. Small details, the ones most fans never see, turn into game-losing fractures. A late read that used to trigger automatic adjustment doesn't happen. A head nod before the snap between a QB and WR? Ignored. An offensive lineman calling out trouble pre-snap? Not heard. Because the trust in the system that underpins those moments, it's no longer there. And that's what makes this entire collapse so dangerous. It's not just that the Browns are losing games, it's how they're losing: disconnected, flat, rotationally unstable, and emotionally numb. When energy dies, resilience dies with it. There's no pushback, no identity, just pieces moving with no shared direction. And it doesn't matter what Kevin Stefanski says in post-game pressers. Doesn't matter how calm or even-keeled he sounds. The question isn't whether he can manage optics. The question is, can his players still believe in his leadership? Because whether he admits it or not, the culture is on life support, and every decision he's made this season has contributed to its failure. Not because of bad calls on third down, but because of silence when it mattered most. Favoritism when balance was needed. Control when clarity was demanded. And that gap between what's said publicly and what S felt privately is something the players feel every single day. Ask any former player what makes a team implode. They'll tell you it's not the tough losses. It's what happens when everyone starts looking out for themselves. And the Browns, they're already there. You can feel guys protecting their brand, their body, their notes, their reps. You see it in how fast they get off the field after drives, in who talks to who, in what's not said on the sidelines. These guys aren't just trying to win anymore, they're trying to survive the politics of a locker room they don't feel safe in. And it might be too late to fix that. Fixing morale mid-season takes more than a trick play or a heartfelt speech. It takes trust, and for a head coach to lead with humility, not control. But instead of rebuilding relationships with players like Sanders, Stefanski has doubled down on his system. The same system that's now being called manipulative. The same structure that benched a healthy vet, sidelined a rising star, and sheltered a failing receiver. At this point, the perception isn't just that Kevin Stefanski is losing games. It's that he's lost the locker room. And once that perception takes hold, it spreads further than any stat. Because if the culture is broken from within, you can't scheme your way out of it. It doesn't matter how talented your roster looks on paper, they're not playing for each other anymore. They're playing not to be next, not the next one blamed, not the next one benched, not the next one politically erased and injury tagged into silence. That's not football. That's a program in collapse. And what comes next determines whether the Browns have any shot at reclaiming what they've lost. Because right now, the structure isn't wobbling. It's crumbling. This isn't just another disappointing season. What's happening with the Cleveland Browns is something deeper, something most teams never recover from once it takes hold. It starts as confusion, grows into frustration, and somewhere along the way, it stops being about poor execution and starts being about credibility. That's where this franchise is now. Credibility is gone. And the only thing left standing is the uncomfortable question players and fans are both asking. Was this ever really about football? Because bad game plans fade, injuries heal, players develop. But when a team starts to believe the coaching staff is tinkering with lineups, shelving stars unfairly, or forcing scapegoats into the spotlight for the sake of personal control, you don't just lose respect, you lose the entire room. Ask yourself, how do you explain a young star like Quinshon Judkins being lined up in nonsensical roles, out of position, out of rhythm, and then sidelined for the season on a play that never should have happened? A veteran like Wyatt Teller, respected throughout the league, claiming he was listed as injured when he wasn't, left sitting in silence while decision-makers spun a narrative that didn't align with reality. The performance of Jerry Jeudy, who struggled repeatedly, often visibly, yet remained untouchable in the lineup while teammates with stronger production saw fewer reps and more blame, and a young quarterback, Shedeur, taking the full weight of a broken offense, while the real issues around him were treated like camouflage. Either Kevin Stefanski has completely lost control of his own system, or he's controlling it in ways the fans were never meant to see. Neither answer is good. And now, instead of game reviews and playoff talk, the headlines have shifted. People aren't wondering about stat lines or fantasy points anymore. They're asking, what is really going on in Cleveland? Because this isn't just mismanagement. This is manipulation. If even half of what we're hearing from inside the locker room is true, players aren't paranoid. They're not being dramatic. NFL athletes don't speak out unless they've been pushed past the silent line. When Judkins said what he said, when Teller stepped forward, when teammates started exchanging those sideline glances, it wasn't random. It was a signal. The kind you don't ignore if you've ever watched a team come undone from the inside. This isn't about Stefanski calling a bad third and long play or not developing second-half adjustments. It's about the core values a team is supposed to be built on: transparency, accountability, trust, all being replaced by chess pieces in a one-man narrative. And whether it's conscious or just culture gone unchecked, the damage is already spreading. You can see it in the effort. You can feel it in the body language. You can hear it in what players say publicly and what they don't. Because when a player fears retaliation for speaking truth, that's not a bad season. That's a bad system. And when performance starts being used to mask personal agendas, that's when careers get damaged. That's when trust is destroyed. That's when teams collapse not from the hits they take on Sundays, but from the silence they absorb every other day of the week. The locker room no longer feels like a brotherhood right now. It feels like a room full of skilled survivors, each one trying to stay visible but not vulnerable. And you can't blame them. When injury reports stop matching the eye test, players notice. When reps are inconsistent without explanation, players notice. When the same guy keeps getting chances no matter what, players notice. They always notice. They talk. And when the talking turns into distrust, it's already over. Right now, the Cleveland Browns aren't struggling because of talent. They're failing because the foundation is cracked, and nothing built on a cracked foundation lasts. Unless there's radical accountability, top-down, immediate, and brutally honest, this season won't just result in losses. It'll result in something worse: long-term decline. A culture that smart players avoid. A program that burns through potential and uses players as shields when strategy fails. And once that label sticks to an organization, it's hard to ever shake it again. So yeah, what's happening in Cleveland isn't just another slump. It's a case study in what happens when the intention behind leadership starts to rot, when success becomes political, when decisions stop being about winning and instead become about control. The truth is, the season might already be lost. But maybe the bigger question now is how many players inside that building feel the same way and just haven't said it out loud yet. Because the silence, it's not calm, it's collapse. And if you're wondering whether this all sounds like speculation, it's not just buzz anymore. When veterans speak up, when rumors align with performance drop-offs, when locker room behavior shifts week by week, it's not whispers. It's confirmation. Confirmation that something bigger is broken, that a team that once had momentum now has mistrust, and a coach that once had control now seems to be holding it just tight enough to destroy everything in the process. Now the real question is simple: can the Browns pull themselves off this ledge, or will this season go down not as a missed opportunity, but as the moment the locker room finally turned its back for good? You already know we'll be watching, because this isn't the end of the story. It's just the part where the truth finally breaks the huddle.